Well, the housing situation in all areas is under a lot of debate at the moment and situations of concern. And joining us now to make it a little clearer to us, Steve Chandler, who is a property development expert. Good on you, Steve. How are you?
Fabulous, Jenny. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. This is a very big concern to everybody. The builders themselves, lack of employment or tradespeople, of course, and lack of supply. I mean, where do we start?
Well, that's a really interesting one. Where do we start?
Yeah.
Look, construction prices are really expensive at the moment because from a building perspective, you know, throughout COVID with the logistic problems, it drove the price of materials through the roof, literally through the roof. Yeah. That's obviously created a lot of problems for builders, and you know, a substantial number of builders have unfortunately gone broke because of it. And then on top of that, we've got a lot of builders who are in trouble financially as well.
Yeah. Not good. Not a good scenario.
No, that's how, coming back to your original question, where do we start? That's the hardest part. We've got a huge number of insolvencies and almost insolvencies that are sitting out there. We don't have enough tradespeople for the builders. Because we're paying, or my industry, the building industry is paying so much for staff because there's a shortage. I read an article last week where the Master Builders Association was saying, nationally if we could get 90,000 tradesmen tomorrow, we could give them all a job.
Oh, goodness me, that many. Gosh.
So, yeah, it's a massive shortage of skilled trades. And with that, with the prices being so high, from a development perspective, property developers can't create, the projects or the apartments, the townhouses, the houses, at a profit. And, we are a for-profit enterprise.
Of course,
Therefore, we can't create the stock that is desperately needed. And so we've got this whole circular scenario, and yet what are all the builders currently doing? Why are they all so busy? And then you've got another issue of, during COVID, all these infrastructure projects were started by the government to make sure that our economy survived when they were thought we were going to go into recession. All these infrastructure projects, they have absorbed all of the labour, and on top of that, they, are taking all the concrete and quarry products and reinforcing steel and structural steel, which means the demand for those products. So that then pushes the prices up again.
It's a perfect storm, isn't it?
It is. I've only been in the game for 43 years, and I can tell you I have never seen anything like this. I've seen, prices go up and prices come down because there's been shortages, but they've been short-term shortages.
Yeah.
And right now it seems to have embedded where even the forecasters in our industry are saying that even this year they believe that construction prices are still going to go up another 4 to 5%. And we're just going, like, if that's happening, how is it possible that we're going to be able to create the product for people who desperately need it?
Going back, that's an awful lot to have to deal with, but going back to the pre-pandemic, it does say here that you mentioned, in fact, that smaller scale builders are still going broke due to the fixed price contracts that they signed during the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, do you recall the Home Builder Grant?
Yes, I do.
At the end of 2020, we had the Home Builder Grant, and the federal government launched that, and state governments had their own first homer grants, etc. And they were trying desperately hard when everything looked like we were going down the gurgler, going into recession. All of this to stimulate the economy, and interest rates were dropping, so everything was sort of heading down the path of a recession. So the government said, okay, let's get this grant out there. Now that stimulated the house building industry, the project home building industry, stimulated it so much that people were going, yeah, great. In Perth, I think a first home buyer with all the different grants, could get about $75,000 in total grants.
My gosh.
And you can imagine how many people queued up for that. So all the builders were there going, oh, mate, this is Christmas. And they were signing up contract after contract after contract to get it done before the drop dead date. And, what that did is it created all sorts of problems for them when we found out later on that the bushfires in 2019, 2020, those massive bad bushfires that we had when everyone remembers Scott Morrison being in
holiday
in
time. Yeah, good
so
bloke.
that's another story. But at that time, those fires, that is where the vast majority of Australia's house framing timber is grown.
Oh, right. Didn't
And
realise.
because of those fires, the severity of them, the intensity of them, it destroyed a lot of the crop.
Yeah, of course
So
it would have, yeah.
suddenly we've got this massive shortage of timber. The whole world has gone into lockdown.
Yeah, awful.
We had to get timber from overseas, generally Canada, and I can't remember the other country, but one of the Nordic countries is where we sort of generally get timber from overseas. And you can imagine they're in lockdown. They're not producing timber. So they're not logging and cutting it up into size for house framing. So suddenly we've got no timber. So the price of timber, effectively what it did is it doubled. And if you're a builder with all these fixed price contracts and your timber costs go through the roof, they double, you can't charge your client for a change in materials. So suddenly all these builders are going, well, there's my profit margin gone. And then all the infrastructure projects started and cost of concrete and reinforcing steel started to go up as well. And with all these builders with those fixed price contracts and all of their construction costs, their materials going through the roof, it was a perfect storm for the so many builders to go broke. And the ones who've survived that, who have got through that now from 2021 through to 2024, the ones who survived it to date are the ones who had adequate cash to be able to keep their building company afloat. But if they haven't been able to pick up new building contracts that are profitable, then they're teetering as well.
Are we looking...
That's half the problem.
Well, gosh, there's more than one problem, that's for sure. Are we looking at a situation where the builders themselves are falling by the wayside, that we're not going to be able to see homes being completed, the people that wish to have these homes built, I mean, the clients, that sort of thing? Where does it leave everybody? What's going to be this outcome, do you think?
I think we look at Victoria for that. Victoria, more so than any other state, has had more project home builders go broke. And from that perspective, we've seen the impact on a lot of them. And look, one of the companies that did go broke, I know one of the owners, and I was talking to him about it, and he said, our costs just went through the roof, and we used all of our cash resources, and what do you do then?
Yeah, what do they do? Yeah,
you run your business for 20 years, and
it's
you have this event. Yeah, so a family business that employs, a huge number of people,
suffer.
Gone.
Well, okay, as a property development expert, Steve, have you got the answers to any of this? Are we going to look at it this long term?
Yeah, so take one hat off and put the other one on.
Yeah.
For me to be able to create property, I've got to be able to make a profit, and at the moment I can't do that. If you look at the immigration figures for last year, we had 659,000 people come into Australia. I think it was permanent immigrants. A lot of them are trades. Those 659,000 people need somewhere to live.
That's right.
So
that's obvious.
Our rents went through the roof last year, and the year before. Yeah. They've gone through the roof. Prices of apartments and townhouses, which is the sort of the more of the mass production type of area, haven't really taken off like rents. And unfortunately, for us to be able to generate a profit, one of two things have to happen. We either have to have an increase in prices, meaning unaffordability, or construction costs have to come down and labour costs have to come down. So
how could that happen? How could it happen?
Well, what I can't understand is how we could have so many people come into Australia, have that many people, that much demand for property, and the apartment and townhouse prices not sort of go through the roof yet. They've incrementally been going up, but not like what houses did.
Yeah.
And that, from our perspective, becomes the problem. If there's no profit, we don't do. And the government's got the same problem where you look at their plan to build, a million affordable homes, that the federal government, I should say, want to build 1 million homes over a sort of a 5-year period. Our industry in its normal, when we're normal, pre-COVID, if you like, we were only creating about 200,000 a year. Yeah. And they're saying we want to do the same thing, about 200,000 affordable on top of the normal industry. And
it's impossible, isn't it?
Well, it's difficult. They haven't done anything with their plan, which started, 18 months, 2 years ago. They haven't delivered a home under that. No. And our industry, I think the housing approvals last year were a third of what they normally are. So it's
looking dire. Yeah. It really is, Steve. I mean, you've got young couples or even older couples trying to get their home built if they're, wanting to build something. Yep. And where are they going to end up? What the heck's going to happen here? What really does need to happen, just finally?
Well, as a property developer, I have to look at what's happening in the market and come up with a strategy to deal with demand.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm looking at what happens in Asia and some other European countries where we have multi-generational households. So maybe as a developer, I now have to start creating multi-generational households, like 6 or 8 bedroom apartments where mum and dad, who might be baby boomers, have got the cash in their equity. They can buy, put the equity into a property. Their children, who might be, young adults, they could pay a mortgage if there was something, needed to be paid. And then their children also live with mum and dad and the grandparents.
Do you know what?
Maybe that's the answer.
I've heard this before, Steve, actually. In fact, I was reading, spoke to somebody about the fact that they can have walls that divide at night the families. They have self-sufficient kitchen, so forth. And during the day, the grandparents at home, the walls can slide back, so they've got the run of the home. We have to start thinking differently, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And this is innovation.
Yep.
Innovation. I love modular forms of construction where you build in a factory and then deliver it to the site, and it's built in half the time. I love that type of idea. However, it's not viable the way that I look at it. It's not viable yet. Okay. A lot of people who are in that industry will say it is, but if it was, more of us developers would be doing it.
Why isn't it viable?
It costs more.
Okay, right. Yeah.
It is more expensive. As simple as that. It just costs more to do. And I could bore you for hours talking about why, and maybe some other time on that one. But yeah, it's just more expensive. The quality is better, but it is more expensive.
Well, I think the idea of the families living together, it's sort of been done overseas and traditionally, hasn't it, in different cultures for years.
Absolutely.
But you still have to have your privacy because we've not grown up like that. But that is definitely the way to be going, it seems, Stephen. Thank you so much for your expertise. Please get back to us if we have a bit of optimism out there.
I shall. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Chandler.